Betty Neumar has been here at the Stanley County Jail for several weeks, held on a $500,000 bond. And when her attorney asked today for that amount to be reduced, the prosecutor revealed some very strange things we did not know about the 76-year-old grandmother.
Good afternoon and welcome to True Crime Mysteries. If you're new to the channel, hello and welcome, and if you're returning, welcome back. We are so close to 50,000 subscribers and thank you all so much for that. And I asked on the community page what everyone would like to do, and someone suggested a Q&A video. So let me know those cues down below and I will make that. If you could hit the like button and comment down below, that would be so appreciated, as engagement helps to get my content distributed further on YouTube. And of course, if you're new here, please subscribe and hit the little bell icon so you never miss an upload, because I'm bad at keeping a schedule. Today, we'll be doing another episode in the Black Widow series, and we'll be covering Betty Neumar. Let's get into it. Dubbed in the media as the Black Widow Granny, Betty Neumar's arrest sparked a media frenzy. She looked like a harmless little grandma, but as investigators began to unravel Betty's life, with every stone unturned, it brought more questions than answers. She had been married at least 5 times and had used 28 different aliases throughout her life. She had numerous credit cards and passports with various names. Each of her husbands died under mysterious circumstances, usually a gunshot wound, and either Betty had the worst luck in the history of time, or she may have been the one to orchestrate that bad luck. She was born Betty Johnson in 1931 in Ironton, Ohio. Her early life was anything but glamorous, and she had been born into extreme poverty. And like many other young women in such circumstances at the time, her best chance to get out of poverty was to marry well. She graduated high school in 1949 and married her high school sweetheart, Clarance Malone, in 1950. He was a mechanic. Though the marriage was short-lived, in court documents, Betty claimed that Malone had been abusive, and it is believed that the couple separated in December of 1951. The couple had one child, Gary, who had been born 3 months after the couple had separated. Betty remarried shortly after she separated from her first husband, and her second husband, James Flynn, adopted Gary. There are no public records of Betty and James's marriage, and very little is known about the couple. They did have a child together, a daughter named Peggy, and their marriage would also be short, and this would be the first mysterious death to befall one of Betty's husbands. Betty claimed that he had died somewhere in New York in 1950. She told investigators that he had died on a pier and froze to death in his car. Betty relocated the family to Jacksonville, Florida, where she went by the name Betty Flynn. She enrolled in beauty college in 1960 and became a beautician. In Jacksonville, Betty, now in her early 30s, met and married Richard Sills. Sills was in the Navy. He had been recently divorced but hadn't kept in contact with his ex-wife or his son. Their marriage had also seemed to be rocky, and Peggy said that what she remembered most about her stepfather, Richard, was that he drank heavily and he liked vodka. She also remembered that he and Betty fought often. In 1965, the couple was arguing in their trailer home in Big Coppic Key, an island in the Florida Keys. The couple was in their bedroom arguing, with both of Betty's children in the other room. 11-year-old Peggy said that she remembered them arguing and hearing a gunshot go off. She said that she remembered going into the room to see what had happened and saw Richard lying on the bed and asking a paramedic if he was dead. Betty claimed that the couple had been arguing and Richard had been intoxicated and shot himself. The death was ruled a suicide, and because it had been ruled a suicide, all records pertaining to Richard's death were destroyed long before investigators had reopened the case. Local law enforcement didn't really handle the investigation into Richard's death. it in large part was left to the NCIS, the Naval Investigative Agency. Though there were some discrepancies between the two agencies, though there was not an autopsy conducted, the Florida medical examiner said it had been a single gunshot wound to the chest, while the NCIS had found there had been 2 wounds, one in the chest and one in the heart. Betty didn't inform Richard's son or ex-wife of his death. The military showed up at their home and informed them. When investigators opened up the investigation in 2009, it was too late. The statute of limitations in Florida had already expired, and Richard was never exhumed. 3 years after Richard Sills' death in 1967, she met Harold Gentry. Harold had been stationed in Florida and had met Betty while she was working as a hairdresser. The couple married less than a year later in January 1968, and they had a daughter, Kelly, a year later. Harold was in the Army, and for years the couple moved around a lot, and after 21 years in service, Harold decided to retire. They landed back in Harold's hometown in Norwood, North Carolina, and the couple built a home on land that had been gifted to them by Harold's sister. During her marriage to Harold, Betty's first husband, Clarance Malone, had died under mysterious circumstances. After his marriage to Betty, he had also remarried twice, and while at his car repair shop, he had been shot on November 27, 1970, in Medina, Ohio. It was a random drive-by shooting, and no one was ever arrested or a suspect in the murder. Harold and Betty seemed to live a very normal and loving marriage for many years. However, Harold's brother, Al Gentry, said that the marriage had been broken beyond repair after 18 years. He alleged that the couple had separated sometime in 1986 and that Betty had actually gone to live in Florida for several months. At that time, Harold had met another woman. Al said that Harold had told Betty he would be out of the house in 2 weeks, and then they could begin the process of divorce. Less than 2 weeks later, Harold had been shot 6 times as he'd been entering his home. At the time, it was believed that Harold had stumbled upon a robbery as the house had been ransacked. Al believes that Betty had hired someone to kill Harold. The police had actually called Al to come identify Harold's body at the scene, as Betty was 3 hours away in Augusta, Georgia. Al said that he knew that Betty had been involved when he said that she arrived on the scene, no tears, not upset, and without being asked, she said that she couldn't have been involved because she was in Augusta. There was no evidence or any suspects in Harold's murder, and the case quickly went cold. Officers also cleared Betty of any wrongdoing, and Betty moved on. After Harold's death, Betty, now in her 50s, she moved to Augusta, Georgia. There, she opened up a salon and continued doing hair. In 1985, Betty's first child, Gary, committed suicide. Gary's wife, Cecilia, claimed that Betty was not a nice person, and it was Betty who received Gary's $10,000 life insurance policy money. Cecilia had said that Gary had also witnessed Richard Sills' death, and the images had deeply traumatized him and even decades later still caused him significant pain. In 1990, Betty met John Neumar in her salon. He was a recent widow with 2 grown children and was looking for companionship. Betty was charming, and John was smitten with her. John's children were shocked when less than a year later they learned that their father was going to marry Betty, a woman that they barely knew. After the marriage in 1991, John's children said things began to change with their father. Their once loving, easygoing relationships turned cold and distant. A large wedge in that relationship came in 1995 when Betty had convinced John's son to invest $1,000 in a Ponzi scheme. She had also convinced 200 others to invest, saying that they would receive $100,000 for every $100 they invested. The money was funding legal expenses for a rich European family that had died without an heir, and the money would be distributed to everyone who funded these European lawyers. Long story short, there was no vast uninherited wealth, and it isn't clear how Betty was involved, but 7 people were arrested in connection to the Ponzi scheme, but Betty was not. Though something happened to John's money, because after a decade of marriage, the couple needed to file for bankruptcy in 2000 with over $200,000 in credit card debts. Prior to his marriage to Betty, John had owned his house outright, had multiple cars, and had a healthy retirement savings account. He had always been good with his money, and it was a life skill he had hammered into his children to save and not to live beyond their means. No one knows where the money went or how they got into such substantial credit card debt. They didn't appear to have spent it on themselves, it just seemed to be money that disappeared. In 2007, John began to get very ill, though he had been healthy his whole life. He was diagnosed with sepsis, but no one knew what was actually wrong with him that caused the sepsis. He started to deteriorate very quickly, and his children hadn't even known he had been sick. When he died soon after, at 76, Betty again didn't tell her deceased husband's children that their father had passed. John's son had been at work and was reading the newspaper when he saw his father's obituary. When he confronted Betty about his father, he learned that she'd had him cremated. This shocked his family, as John was Catholic, had never intended on being cremated, and had already purchased his funeral plot next to his first wife. The family went to the police and learned that John's cause of death had been determined to be natural causes, and there had not been an autopsy performed before his cremation. In 2007, Al Gentry was successful in getting his brother's cold case reopened in North Carolina, and the law enforcement agencies reached out to the Georgia authorities and had both Harold and John's deaths re-examined. A search warrant was issued and Betty's home was searched. During the search, they found several varieties of poisons, which included arsenic-based rat poisonings and a highly poisonous substance called carbon tetrachloride, the latter being very odd. The bottle had been found empty, and it is a liquid that is colorless with a mild sweet odor, and exposure to the chemical could cause liver and kidney failure, gastrointestinal and neurological symptoms, similar to what John had been experiencing prior to his death. His cremation remains were examined, and though they found evidence of heavy metals in the remains, it was a bust. John had been on several medications, and some of those medications could also account for the metals in his system. It had been too late to get a definitive conclusion. Betty was arrested in May 2008 and charged with solicitation to commit first-degree murder. According to her indictment, officers had found evidence that showed she had attempted to hire 3 different people to carry out the murder of Harold Gentry. She was 76 at the time of her arrest. She was initially held on a $500,000 bond. Officers believed that Betty had likely learned early on that murder was easier than divorce. However, though money may have been the motive, she didn't get much insurance money from her husband. She said in an interview, "I got no insurance from the first one, no insurance from the third one. After Harold died, I got $50,000, but as far as all this money and all this stuff goes, there wasn't none," in response to being accused of murdering for the insurance money. She had spent several months in jail, but was released after posting a $300,000 bail. Betty's daughters, Peggy and Kelly, believed her mother was innocent. Peggy said in a statement, "She has been a caring, loving mother, and she's a loving, caring grandmother. I think that she was just dealt a bad hand." Betty also maintained her innocence, and before she received a trial date, she died of cancer in 2011 at the age of 79. After her death, the states involved closed their cases, with so many mysteries surrounding Betty. Officers had hoped for a deathbed confession, but none came. Michael, the son of Richard Sills, still wants his father's body exhumed, as his death is the only one.
So what did happen to James?
He froze to death in a truck. He was sleeping in a truck. He was an alcoholic. All of his family knew it.
Husband number 3 supposedly killed himself in 1965 in Florida, but since investigators ruled it a suicide, they destroyed Richard Sills' records.
The strange one to me is your third husband, Richard Sills.
Yeah.
What happened there?
He shot himself.
Because Peggy said that she heard you having a row, and then she heard a shot.
He wanted to know where his vodka was, and I showed him, and he said yes, and said somebody's took my gun. I said, "Oh no," I said, "It's right there in the drawer where you always keep it." And he was standing beside the bed, and I was standing at the foot of the bed. He turned around to the dresser and pulled it out, and he shot one time. That was it. One time. So then Harold and I got married. We was together 19 years, almost 20 years.
In scenarios like this, people say, this Black Widow thing, you've heard
Yeah.
all that.
Mm-hmm.
And and they do it for the insurance and things. People say those sort of things.
Let me let him in on a clue, honey. I got no insurance from the first one, no insurance from the third one, no insurance from the fourth one. Well, Harold. I got $50,000. But as far as all this money and all this stuff, there wasn't none.
What about the people who say you approached them and said, I want you to kill Harold for me?
They're nuts. I never said I want you to kill Harold. Who says that I did? I didn't approach anybody.
Al Gentry says that.
Well, Al Gentry must have been the one that approached him.
He said that when you arrived at the house after Harold had been shot, he says that the first words you said to him were, I was in Augusta, and that made him suspicious.
You know, I don't know that I even talked to him. And like several others have said, where was he at? He wasn't even around, that I know of. He might have been there, but I sure did not say that. I had two Valium before I ever got there. Because when I heard it, I was standing in, maybe I shouldn't be talking about this because it's about the case. But I wasn't, no. Hold your arm as you went up the stairs and down the stairs. And he was good. He was good to me. And I was good to him. John was sick for 6 or 7 years. And you know, his son says he didn't know his father was sick. Don't believe that. He's been married 6 times. And, you know, his daddy didn't use women like he has. And I just feel like that that's his problem. He's got a problem.
I've had a history of picking bad spouses, you know what I'm saying? But you know what? All my exes are still alive and they all say something good about me. You know, I don't have no dead ones laying in the graveyard, you know.
Police took John's ashes, didn't they?
Yes, I have them back. I don't know what the big deal was because, you know, if I'd have done anything wrong, it'd have been different.
Did John's son, John Jr., did he ever ask you for his father's ashes back?
No.
He said to me he'd like his father's ashes back.
Well, I would have gave them to him, but not now. Not now. Because I will take his ashes and do what he wanted me to with them. He wanted me to put them in the ocean. And when I go down to see his sister, this is his sister, brother, and the mother. When I go down there, we're going to take them down to the ocean and let him go. That's what he wanted.
just because of what that bitch had done to my brother. I just hope it's soon over. I wish there was a horse now that I could just step off of and just walk on off and leave it, but it ain't. Like the sheriff told me, he said, you busted this hornet's nest and you're going to have to stay here and fight the bees with us. So I reckon I have to be here and get that last bee. And that name, that's what we call Betty, B, bitch.
I could not control when somebody died. That's God's work. And if he got ready to take me tonight, I couldn't say no. You know, whenever it's your turn to go, it's your turn. You got to be strong. You got to be strong.
It's a tangled web, isn't it? That's
yes, it
surrounding
is.
You. Do you get sick of it all?
Yeah, at times. At times, yes. But then I get on my knees. It's the only thing you can do.
Do you bear any animosity towards all these people who are accusing you?
Not really. Because later on, it's going to eat their heart out. The hate and discontent that they're living in now will make them miserable. And it's not going to bother me.
Are you a forgiving sort of person?
You have to forgive. If you're going to heaven, you have to forgive. You don't have to forget, but you do have to forgive.
Al Gentry passed in 2013 after fighting to keep his brother's murder case alive for almost 25 years. Dedicated to getting justice, he continued fighting even after Neumar's death, as the shooter is still at large. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Was Betty a Black Widow serial killer, or just had really, really bad luck? Well, that is it for this video. As always, please give this video a thumbs up if you like the content, and subscribe for more if you haven't already. If you've done all that and want to support me and the channel, we have channel membership as well as Patreon to get early access, members-only content, and more. We also have merch and other goodies in the description box and links to all my socials. But until then, I will see you on the next one. Bye for now.